Chapter 1: The 101st Divorce Proposal. I had begged Kevin Collins 100 times. Finally, he agreed to go to Tibet with me and my mother as a way to repay a favor. But even until my mother passed away with regret, we still didn't see his appearance. His secretary posted photos of the two of them horseback riding. "The place I want to go, no matter how far, he will accompany me." Seeing the location less than 2 kilometers away from me, I called to confront him, and he casually replied, "I've always been like this. If you can't stand it, then divorce me." This was the 101st time he proposed divorce. This time I didn't hold on anymore, and yet he started to regret it. I handled my mother's funeral alone. In just a few short hours, Kevin Collins' secretary, Hannah Brown, had posted countless videos. The two of them horseback riding together, taking portraits together, visiting temples to pray together. Kevin Collins, who never updated his status, broke his usual habit to share Hannah Brown's posts. It was as if they were officially announcing their relationship. The comments section was flooded with praise, calling them a match made in heaven. I wanted to scroll past, but the images before me still pierced my heart. They were a match made in heaven, and I, the legal wife, was what? Absolutely nothing. Anyway, Kevin Collins was willing to cross half the country for Hannah Brown but wouldn't go an extra 2 kilometers for me. I begged 100 times, yet it couldn't compare to a single word from Hannah Brown. I sent Kevin Collins a single message, "All right." A few hours later, he called, his tone cold and distant. "Is it always like this? Isn't it annoying?" I was momentarily speechless. Every time we argued, it was Kevin Collins who brought up divorce. He knew I loved him, knew I couldn't bear to leave him. So, every time he did something wrong and felt guilty, he would coldly say, "If you can't take it, then let's divorce." For 6 years, I compromised and lowered my head 100 times. This was the 101st time, but I didn't want to bow down anymore. I chose to let him go. I took a deep breath. My mother has passed away. We don't need to keep pretending to maintain her health anymore. A long silence followed. Kevin Collins's tone softened. "I didn't know." "Wait for me, I'll come right away." I waited for an hour. While waiting, the sky suddenly opened up, and rain poured down. I ran to find shelter, but suddenly felt the world spinning. A suffocating sensation overwhelmed me. I couldn't stand steadily, rolled down a slope, hit my head hard on a rock, and lost consciousness entirely. When I woke up, I found myself in a hospital bed, my head wrapped in thick bandages. There was no one beside me. The nurse said I had severe altitude sickness and a mild concussion, requiring 2 days of observation in the hospital. 2 days passed, yet Kevin Collins never showed up. All I saw were Hannah Brown's constant updates. "Soaked in the rain, caught a slight cold, but thankfully he's been taking great care of me. Today, he personally made chicken soup for me." So touching. In these 2 days of being sick, he hasn't left my side for even a minute. Meeting him is the greatest blessing of my life. I remembered not long ago when I had a fever and asked Kevin Collins to make me a bowl of ginger soup. He acted extremely annoyed. "Emma Smith, my hands are meant for greater things, not for chores like cooking or laundry for you. If you don't like it, divorce me and find someone else." In truth, it wasn't that he wasn't willing to do those things, he just wasn't willing to do them for me. Suddenly, everything felt so unclear. Hannah Brown is a university student I sponsored, and after graduating, she interned at our company. At that time, Kevin Collins hated her, constantly complaining to me that she was both clumsy and foolish. But somehow, Kevin Collins started mentioning her more and more in front of me. The words he shared with me, however, became fewer and fewer. Now, we are like 2 strangers. Hannah Brown meeting Kevin Collins was the luck of her lifetime. But me meeting Kevin Collins was the regret of mine. I no longer want to prolong this regret, so I texted Kevin Collins, saying that after coming home, I would go to the Civil Affairs Bureau to file for divorce. This time, Kevin Collins responded very quickly. I have something urgent and can't come back right away. Stop causing trouble. Meet me at the airport tomorrow, and I'll go home with you. I no longer foolishly waited for Kevin Collins. I bought a plane ticket myself. On the plane, I drifted off and had a very long dream. In the dream, my relationship with Kevin Collins was still strong, and Hannah Brown never appeared. He wanted to start a business, and I used all my savings to support him. He needed a good wife, so I quit my job to take care of him. Step by step, we moved from a cheap rented apartment to a central villa, from an electric bike to a Rolls-Royce. He became successful, and his love for me remained unchanged. We were once a beautiful story in our circle. Everything changed from the day I lost our child. Chapter 2. I didn't dare to continue reminiscing and tried to wake up from the dream. The plane landed, and I took a cab home by myself. It wasn't until late at night on the third day that Kevin Collins returned. Didn't I tell you to wait for me so we could go together? Why did you break your promise? Awakened suddenly, my head ached, and I groggily replied, You mean to have me wait for you at the airport for 3 days and 3 nights alone? Kevin Collins pressed his lips together. Forget it, I don't want to argue with you anymore. Get up and make me a bowl of noodles. I didn't respond, curling up in the blanket and turning my back to him to sleep. Unhappy, Kevin Collins threw his suitcase down. Marrying a woman like you is just bad luck. With that, he slammed the door and left. I didn't set an alarm and slept until I naturally woke up. In the past, I would get up at 6 every morning to iron Kevin Collins' shirts and prepare breakfast. But Kevin Collins was never satisfied, complaining that my ironing wasn't as neat as Hannah Brown's. If I made light dishes, he said they lacked flavor. If I made rich dishes, he complained about the grease being unhealthy. The meals I spent hours preparing couldn't compare to a simple bowl of instant noodles Hannah Brown made, which he found comforting and touching. If that's the case, there's no need for me to keep trying to serve him. But today, surprisingly, Kevin Collins made breakfast himself. He ate porridge without lifting his head. Your mother passed away, and I'm sad too. But you don't need to act out during these days. What day? I was stunned. Kevin Collins took out a gift box from behind him. Emma Smith, you really disappoint me. You even forgot our 6-year wedding anniversary. At this, he suddenly stopped. What happened to the wound on your head? When you were making chicken soup for Hannah Brown, I was just finishing my mother's funeral. I got altitude sickness, rolled down a slope, hit my head on a rock, and got caught in the rain. I shrugged. Nothing serious. Her cold was worse. Kevin Collins' dark eyes stared at me, filled with an emotion I couldn't understand. After a while, he finally said, Eat breakfast. It's seafood porridge, your favorite. After eating, check if you like the gift. No need. Today is July 20th, and our anniversary was June 20th. It's been a month. Also, I'm allergic to seafood. A late gift, I don't need. Late care and love, I don't need either. The one who likes seafood porridge is Hannah Brown. The one who likes receiving gifts is also Hannah Brown. What I wanted, from beginning to end, was simply the companionship of Kevin Collins. Kevin Collins remained silent for a moment. Work has been hectic lately. I went to Tibet purely for business negotiations, so don't overthink it. Hannah is still young, you don't need to compare yourself to her. Besides, there's nothing between her and me. Every time Hannah Brown was mentioned, Kevin Collins would talk excessively. I didn't bother to expose the truth. Who goes on a business trip with someone of the opposite sex and books only one room? I casually replied, You're right. Seeing my indifferent attitude, Kevin Collins seemed displeased. He set his chopsticks down heavily. Emma Smith, can you stop causing trouble? I provide you with good food and a comfortable life. What more do you want? I didn't respond and continued reviewing the divorce agreement sent by the lawyer. Kevin Collins kept lecturing me. I'm talking to you, what are you doing? All you do is waste time online reading silly novels. Your mind is completely ruined. Can't you learn from Hannah Brown? Look at her, so polite and graceful. In the past, hearing such words from Kevin Collins would have made me feel insecure and upset. I would doubt myself, trembling in fear. Eventually, I'd bow my head, admit fault, and apologize to Kevin Collins. But now, all I felt was how tiresome he was. I have something to do. I'm leaving. Emma Smith, I'm not finished talking. Kevin Collins reached out to grab me, but I avoided his touch with disdain. Over the years, had Kevin Collins ever seriously listened to what I had to say? Whenever I spoke a little more, he'd get annoyed, slam the door, and leave, leaving me alone at home to cry in silence. In this house, is he the only one allowed to come and go as he pleases? I couldn't bear to look at Kevin Collins for another second. I drove straight to the lawyer's office. Chapter 3. After finalizing the details of asset division, I received a message from Kevin Collins. There's an urgent matter. Come to my office. I thought for a moment. Whatever Kevin Collins had going on wasn't important to me, but if there was an issue with the company, it might affect the amount of money I'd receive. As soon as I arrived at the reception desk, I heard bursts of laughter. The receptionists were joking around while making a call to Hannah Brown. Sister Hannah was right. As long as she uses the CEO's phone to send a message, that woman will come running like a little puppy. Not long after, Hannah Brown stepped out of the elevator. Emma, are you here to see the CEO? The CEO is busy and doesn't meet with outsiders. She deliberately emphasized the word outsiders. In everyone's eyes now, Hannah Brown was Kevin Collins' publicly acknowledged lover. And I, the aging wife, was nothing but an outsider. I pointed at the group of people who had just mocked me. You all, pack your things and leave. This company was built by Kevin Collins and me together. I owned a significant portion of the shares, so firing a few minor employees was just a matter of a single word. Hannah Brown's expression immediately changed. What right do you have to throw your weight around here? Matters in this company are decided by the CEO and me. I didn't bother arguing and was about to call Kevin Collins when, coincidentally, he appeared. Why are you here? I thought Kevin Collins would be furious. In the past, every time I came to see him, he would feel embarrassed and show clear displeasure. But this time, his tone seemed somewhat smug. Hannah Brown quickly started crying and complaining. Emma doesn't know her place. She came in shouting and causing chaos, accusing us of seducing you and saying she wanted to fire all of us. Emma Smith. Kevin Collins's face turned icy cold. I can tolerate your foolishness and ugliness, but your baseless suspicions utterly disgust me. He sighed again. I truly regret being with you. The girls around us covered their mouths, laughing. Hannah Brown looked at me triumphantly. Strangely, I felt nothing in my heart. Perhaps I had already anticipated Kevin Collins would say something like that. When he first cheated on me with Hannah Brown, our mutual friends advised him not to abandon his loyal wife. He said, "Do you know how suffocating she is? Any man who stays with her would cheat. She deserved to be abandoned since childhood. Always controlling everything, never caring about her appearance, living like this as a woman is truly a failure." At that time I had gained weight because I was helping him entertain guests. Hearing what he said, I became insecure and anxious all the time. Seeing food made me nauseous. As a result, I developed stomach problems. After that, I didn't dare attend parties or meet anyone. Gradually, I lost weight, but my stomach illness never healed. This led to long-term physical weakness and frequent illnesses. Why aren't you saying anything? Feeling guilty? No wonder you couldn't keep the baby. A woman like you doesn't deserve to be a wife or a mother. At the mention of the child I lost, a sharp pain pierced my heart. Every time we argued, Kevin Collins always struck at my most vulnerable spot. He constantly tried to provoke me into anger and arguments, then mocked me with a smug I knew it expression when I lost my composure. But this time I remained calm. Then stop forcing it. I've already prepared the divorce agreement. Let's get divorced. I handed the divorce papers to Kevin Collins and casually pulled a long, curly strand of golden brown hair off his clothes. Kevin Collins's eyes flickered slightly. It's not what you think. He quickly regained his composure, then sighed, stop degrading yourself. I truly have no patience left to forgive and tolerate you again. I continued staring at Kevin Collins, watching as he began to panic. Trying to stay calm, I finally said what I had been keeping in my heart for so long. You have no right to mention not. I know what you did the day I had the miscarriage. The day I lost my child was the turning point of this marriage. It was also the beginning of the story between Kevin Collins and Hannah Brown. That cruel truth I had avoided for so long, now, I was determined to end it. Emma Smith. Kevin Collins was completely flustered. I suppressed the pain in my heart. Do you want me to reveal the truth here, in front of everyone? Kevin Collins immediately grabbed my hand. Emma, listen to me. Let's talk about this at home. Send them all away, then we'll talk in your office. That house, I no longer wanted to return to it. Kevin Collins nodded, for the first time compromising with me. It had been a long time since I last came to Kevin Collins' office. Ever since he started being with Hannah Brown, he redecorated the office to suit her preferences. The passcode was something only Hannah Brown knew. Looking at the unfamiliar surroundings, I let out a small sigh. Sign it. Stop making a scene. I work hard every day. You're not young anymore, why bother competing with younger women? Do you think behaving like this will make me like you? Chapter 4. I quickly retorted, don't you find your actions absolutely disgusting? Kevin Collins froze for a moment, his face showing displeasure. I've treated you well enough, given you the title of Mrs. Co., provided you with good food and drink, taken care of you. Even though you can't have children, I haven't complained, what more could you be dissatisfied with? Someone like me, with my status, who wouldn't have a bunch of women around them? Besides, even if I cheated, it's because you pushed me to it. Look at yourself in the mirror, do you think any man would care about you? I didn't look into the mirror, but instead gazed at the photo hanging on the wall. I looked at the various fashion magazines spread across the table. I looked at the stuffed animals on the sofa. Finally, I couldn't help but laugh. Kevin Collins, do you really think all of this is happiness? Don't you see how fake your life is? You only care about your own feelings, and have no respect for others. I used to think I would feel sad or hurt hearing these words, but honestly, now I just feel relieved and even amused. My laughter made Kevin Collins uncomfortable, leaving him at a loss for words. I've made my decision. We're getting a divorce, and this is the end. I will no longer stay in this marriage, enduring your disdain and indifference. I reached out, took the divorce papers, and signed them. Kevin Collins stood there, stunned and helpless. Before meeting Kevin Collins, I was a lively girl who loved dressing up and taking care of my appearance. To help him start his business, I sold my favorite bags and jewelry, and even learned how to behave tactfully to assist him at parties. But under his constant belittlement and suppression, I became insecure and overly sensitive. Now, I don't dare to wear makeup or dress nicely, fearing his cruel ridicule. Yet, the truth is, I'm not unattractive. When I walk down the street, strangers still compliment my beauty. Stop saying useless things, and just sign the divorce papers, I said. Have you thought this through? I don't believe any other man would want you besides me. Kevin Collins leaned back in his chair, looking at me indifferently. Do you think those words will scare me? I own half the company's shares. Even though I haven't been socializing for a while, my past connections are still intact. Without you, I'll live just fine. Before meeting Kevin Collins, I was already living well. His presence only brought me pain and scars. Without him, I can only live better. Kevin Collins wanted to say something, but Hannah Brown suddenly burst in, interrupting him. she cried, her eyes brimming with tears, as she threw herself into his arms. Kevin, the people at the reception desk are all my friends. They didn't do anything wrong. Can you not fire them? It's so unfair. Kevin Collins awkwardly pushed Hannah Brown away. I glanced over and said, "This is an office. Please mind your image." Hearing this, Hannah Brown stepped toward me with a disdainful expression. What's wrong with a hug? Stop pretending. Didn't you already know? She looked at me provocatively. We didn't just hug here, we slept here too. Even on the day you had a miscarriage, we were, smack. I slapped Hannah Brown hard. My body trembled uncontrollably. Losing my child is a lifelong pain, a nightmare I still don't dare to recall. In the beginning, both Kevin Collins and I loved children. After we got married, we tried for a baby, and in the second year, we finally had the fruit of our love. At that time, Kevin Collins spun me around in happiness, vowing to be a great father. Back then, his career was on the rise, and I couldn't always be by his side. Worried that he might neglect taking care of himself because of work, I asked Hannah Brown to be his assistant, to take care of him on my behalf. When I was 4 months pregnant, we found out it was a girl and decided to name her Hannah. Hannah Hung Vin. The doctor said the pregnancy was unstable, so I became even more cautious. At 5 months, I had an unexpected miscarriage and nearly lost my life. Kevin Collins rushed to the hospital, knelt by my bedside, his eyes swollen from crying. He kept saying, "I'm sorry, it's my fault for not taking good care of you. Let's not have children again, I truly can't bear to lose you." I gently wiped away his tears. During that moment, his phone kept ringing. I told him to go handle his work, that I was fine and he didn't need to worry. He hesitated before leaving, promising he would do his best to give me a better life. But I never expected, truly never expected. Never expected that Hannah Brown had been taking care of him so well that she ended up in bed with him. Kevin Collins left because Hannah Brown had called him. They rented a room together, and only after finishing their business did he return to the hospital to visit me. When he knelt by my bedside, grieving for my pain, the red marks on his body hadn't even faded. He even posted a status update on his way to the rented room, "In this life, Not has endured too much suffering because of me. I swear to make it up to her with all my life." Later, I discovered the truth. Kevin Collins even deleted the status about me. I was still foolishly unwilling to believe all of it. Until they became increasingly blatant, increasingly public. Until Kevin Collins began to no longer hide his disdain for me, and Hannah Brown started acting as if she were Mrs. Collins. Only then did I fully understand. My love had forever left me, along with Hannah. Chapter 5. Kevin, look at her. Hannah Brown's voice pulled me back to reality. I looked up and saw her gazing at Kevin Collins with a pitiful expression. But Kevin Collins rushed over to me, gently holding me. "Emma, it's not what you think. I don't know what you've heard, but it's not what you think." At first, I didn't believe it. Then I went to checked the room rental records, checked the lobby cameras. My hands trembled uncontrollably. Years have passed, yet every time I recall it, the pain feels like thousands of arrows piercing my heart. Kevin Collins, tell me, what is the truth? How can you be such a good actor? The moment the truth was confirmed, I was overwhelmed by indescribable anguish. In despair, I thought about death, about ending everything with him. But my mother was ill and needed me. Every day, I forced myself to smile, keeping the secret and the bitterness locked inside. Pretending to know nothing, maintaining the facade of harmony with Kevin Collins. Deceiving everyone, putting on a show in front of my mother. But back then, everyone around me knew I was nothing but a joke. Kevin Collins never visited my mother. She had somewhat guessed something was wrong. That's why, in her final days, she requested to go to Tibet to give thanks. She wanted to see how I was living and hoped I could truly live well. Unfortunately, Kevin Collins disappointed me. And I disappointed my mother. Kevin Collins shook his head repeatedly. I was just too heartbroken. It was a moment of impulsiveness. I never truly wanted to betray you, to betray our marriage. Emma, I'm sorry. Please forgive me this once, won't you? I've tolerated you so many times, can't you forgive me just once? Betrayal is not just physical infidelity, but also emotional disloyalty. Kevin Collins constantly used the threat of divorce to intimidate me. Isn't that also a betrayal of emotions? From body to heart, Kevin Collins' betrayal was not just once, but 100 times. Suddenly, I laughed, filled with sarcasm. You're asking me to forgive you. What about her? What do you intend to do about her? Kevin Collins hesitated for a long time. I'll transfer her to another department so she won't appear before you anymore. Let's both take a step back, shall we? I laughed coldly, looking at him with disdain. You think this is as simple as taking a step back? Kevin Collins, you understand nothing. Even now, you don't realize how deeply you've hurt me. I slapped Kevin Collins directly. This slap should have landed on his face 4 or 5 years ago. Kevin Collins stared at me in disbelief, his eyes wide open. I've already apologized. What more do you want? Don't you think you bear some responsibility too? Hannah Brown tried to pull Kevin Collins back, but he shoved her away. Kevin Collins stepped closer, exuding an intense sense of oppression. I threw the divorce agreement straight at his face. If you won't sign it, we'll meet in court. As I turned and walked away, I heard him shouting angrily behind me. Let's see how you live without me. I'll live however I want. Anything is better than staying with Kevin Collins, enduring humiliation and suppression, waiting for him to dole out scraps of affection. Kevin Collins froze my credit cards. But I wasn't in a rush to find a job. I sold the expensive furniture in Kevin Collins' house, used the money to rent a new apartment, and focused on fighting for the divorce. Half of the company and all the assets under his name belong to me. I'm going to claim what's mine. Many lawyers wanted to take this case, but in the end, I chose Lucas Johnson, Kevin Collins' high school classmate. Lucas Johnson enthusiastically said, "When I found out you were with him, I was shocked. I wanted to advise you, but I was afraid you'd think I was meddling. Oh, by the way, the anonymous email you received was from me. I thought you'd divorce him back then, but I didn't expect," I bitterly said. "I never thought you lacked even a shred of ambition. I endured a painful and humiliating marriage like that for 6 years. Not everyone has the courage and means to withdraw in time. As long as you realize it, it's never too late." Lucas Johnson confidently took my hand. "I'll reclaim everything you've lost in the past 6 years in a different way." At that moment, the tears I had been holding back finally fell uncontrollably. Facing Kevin Collins' cruel words, I could pretend to be strong, but even the slightest comfort and warmth could make me break down. I couldn't hold it in anymore and sobbed uncontrollably, as if I wanted to cry out all the grievances of the past years. Lucas Johnson was very considerate. He only handed me tissues after I had poured out all my emotions. Actually, I wasn't crying because of him, just feeling sad about my blind devotion for the past 10 years. "It's okay, you still have many decades ahead of you. I'll help you reclaim even more, so the coming years will be even brighter." When our eyes met, both Lucas Johnson and I made a certain decision. One day, while we were discussing things, I received a call from Kevin Collins. "Emma Smith, what have you done? Where is all the stuff in the house? Why did you have to do this? Why abandon this good life?" "I sold it." "You're still mad at me, aren't you? Stop causing trouble. Even Hannah has agreed to compromise, so what more do you want? You eat my food, wear my clothes, use my things, can't you show a little gratitude?" I immediately hung up the phone and blocked his number. Lucas Johnson looked at me with admiration in his eyes. Before long, Kevin Collins called again using a different number. This time, his tone was much softer. Chapter 6. I don't want to argue with you, I just want to have a proper conversation. Emma, meet me just once. At the very least, we should say goodbye in person. It's been a long time since we sat down and talked. Ever since he got involved with Hannah Brown, we hadn't had a decent conversation. I hesitated for a moment, then, with Lucas Johnson's permission, I decided to meet Kevin Collins. It had been a while since I last saw him. Kevin Collins was still dressed impeccably in a suit, seemingly well taken care of by Hannah Brown. But for some reason, his eyes lacked the brightness they once had. "Emma, I don't want a divorce." "I know. At our age, there are many reasons not to divorce, to continue living together. For example, money, children, reputation." Kevin Collins looked at me with a glimmer of hope. "Have you changed your mind? If you want, we can have another child. I promise to maintain your dignity in front of others. But I'm not like that. We were together because we loved each other, and now we're parting because we no longer do. You don't love me, and I don't love you anymore. There's no need to keep holding on." The light in Kevin Collins's eyes gradually dimmed. He lowered his head, cutting his steak patiently and meticulously, then finally placed the neatly cut piece in front of me. "How could you not love me, Emma? I've always loved you, and I believe you still love me too. The 6-year anniversary gift box, you haven't opened it yet. Once you see it, I believe you'll change your mind." Kevin Collins opened the gift box I had carelessly discarded and placed it in front of me. Inside was a shimmering gold bracelet. At that time, our careers were just beginning, and we needed a lot of working capital. "I sold the gold bracelet my mother gave me, and you said, when we have money later, I'll definitely buy you a bigger one." I remember. Ever since then, every time I passed by a jewelry store, I would stop and look at the display window. I imagined that one day, when we made money, Kevin Collins would buy me everything I wanted and give it to me. But when we succeeded, the first gold bracelet Kevin Collins bought wasn't for me, it was for Hannah Brown. Hannah Brown wasn't even happy. She scoffed at the gold bracelet, calling it outdated, and demanded Kevin Collins get her a Cartier bracelet or a Vacheron Constantin watch instead. Kevin Collins, who knew nothing about such things, was willing to learn just for Hannah Brown. Now, he can distinguish lipstick shades, knows all the latest designs from major brands, and understands how to shop strategically to get handbags. Every piece of luxury furniture in their home was bought by him to secure handbags for Hannah Brown. But he never gave me any of those things. Because deep down, he believed I didn't deserve them. He never wanted to put in any effort for me. That day, I saw a stack of fashion magazines on your desk. You really cared about Hannah Brown. You gave her a Vacheron Constantin watch and then gave me the gold bracelet she rejected. Emma, you weren't so materialistic before. Money or love, at least one of them is necessary. I turned my head to look at the bustling crowd on the street. When I was in love, I was willing to sacrifice everything for Kevin Collins. But our love had run dry amidst countless betrayals and endless waiting on his part. I had given him countless chances, but this time, I no longer needed love, I needed money. I needed a lot of money to make up for the pain I had endured. Emma, why don't you believe that I love you? I admit I've made mistakes, but I'm willing to change for you. I smiled faintly, reaching out to flip the collar of Kevin Collins. Red marks from kisses were visible on his neck. Kevin Collins froze. Then hurriedly tried to cover them up. What else was there to say? I had witnessed Kevin Collins' masterful acting skills. On the day I lost my child, he could both embrace his lover and kneel by my bedside, crying. That's why I no longer believed anything he said. When I left, I placed the divorce agreement in front of Kevin Collins. He stared at the divorce agreement for a long time, then tears began to fall, one drop after another. Whether those tears were genuine or just part of his act, I didn't know. And I didn't want to know. Kevin Collins didn't bother me for a long time after that. On Hannah Brown's social media account, all content related to the two of them had also been deleted. One beautiful morning, Kevin Collins sent me a photo. He had gone to Tibet and found the red cloth we had written on 6 years ago under an ancient tree. After many years, weathered by the elements, the red cloth had faded, and the writing on it had blurred. Looking closely, one could still make out, "May the gods and Buddha bless Kevin Collins and Emma Smith with successful careers and complete happiness." That red cloth had been tied there by my mother 6 years ago. At that time, Kevin Collins and I had just gotten married and were going through the most challenging phase of starting our careers. My mother heard that prayers in Tibet were incredibly sacred, so she traveled thousands of miles alone to pray to the heavens and Buddha for blessings for me and Kevin Collins. Afterward, Kevin Collins indeed found success in his career. But this marriage was never truly fulfilling or happy. Looking back, perhaps my mother wanted to go to Tibet in her final moments not only to give thanks, but also to make one last effort for our marriage. Unfortunately, Kevin Collins let down my love and also my mother's final wish. The phone chimed again. Kevin Collins sent me a long voice message. "Emma, I don't understand how we ended up here. 6 years ago, everything was still so clear in my mind. We overcame so many difficulties together, and it was so hard to finally have good days. Why do we have to part ways? We should have been perfectly happy together." I wondered if things would have turned out differently if I hadn't supported Hannah Brown from the start. But I quickly found the answer. No. Hannah Brown was merely an excuse for Kevin Collins to escape the marriage. He wanted a dutiful wife to build his career with him, but he also needed a young, beautiful woman to satisfy his vanity. From beginning to end, the only person he truly loved was himself. In Kevin Collins' eyes, a perfectly happy marriage was built on my sacrifices and endurance. Now, I no longer want to torment myself. Even though I didn't reply, Kevin Collins continued to patiently share his journey with me. Until the final day, he eventually agreed to divorce. "I'm sorry, Emma. After calming down, I realized how much I've wronged you over the years. I really want to ask for one last chance, but I know you won't forgive me anymore. I agree to the divorce. My flight is at noon tomorrow. Let's meet at the Civil Affairs office, before then." Chapter 7. Finally, I breathed a sigh of relief. Right on time, I brought all the necessary documents to the Civil Affairs Bureau. I waited for a long time until the bureau closed for the day, but Kevin Collins never showed up. I made several phone calls, but no one answered. When I got home, I received a message. It was from Hannah Brown. "No matter what tricks you use, it doesn't matter. As long as I beckon, he'll come back to me immediately." The background of the photo seemed to be taken at a hospital. Kevin Collins looked deeply worried as he gazed at Hannah Brown. I was speechless and immediately contacted Lucas Johnson to prepare for filing a divorce lawsuit. Before I could take action, Kevin Collins came to see me that evening. He stood at my doorstep, eyes red, his whole body trembling, like a fallen leaf drifting in water. "Emma, Hannah's child is gone. Seeing her in pain reminded me of you. When we lost Hannah, you were just as devastated." Kevin Collins suddenly grabbed my shoulders. "I know I was wrong, I truly know I was wrong. Emma, the person I've always loved is you. I was just running away. I couldn't face the awful past, couldn't face the loss of Hannah. I sought solace in Hannah, but from beginning to end, the one I love has always been you. Please, give me another chance. I'll completely sever ties with Hannah, we can have another child, we can find our way back to Hannah. I swear I'll treat you and our child well. Life is truly full of surprises. What happened 4 years ago is now repeating itself in a different way. The only difference is that this time, Hannah Brown and I have switched roles. And I will make a different choice than she did." I slapped Kevin Collins hard, though my own eyes couldn't help but redden. "You truly disgust me. As a husband, as a father, even as a boss or a lover, you're unworthy." Perhaps Hannah chose to leave back then, because she didn't want to see me continue wasting my life on a man like you. Years have passed, and Kevin Collins still hasn't changed. He used my pain to coerce me into coming back, without considering how much it hurt to be betrayed on the day I lost my child. "You have no right to ask me to come back," and even less right to mention Hannah. Never show up in front of me again, you're not worthy. I slammed the door shut. Through the surveillance monitor, I saw Kevin Collins hadn't left. He knelt at my doorstep, crying through the night, and only staggered away at dawn. In the end, love turned into plaintiff and defendant. Kevin Collins didn't want a divorce. Lucas Johnson presented a series of evidence proving Kevin Collins' infidelity and asset transfers during the marriage. Each piece of evidence was like a dagger to my heart. But fortunately, 6 years of cold neglect had forged an unbreakable resilience in me. Kevin Collins' face grew increasingly pale. Everything I endured over those 6 years became glaringly evident before him. He couldn't deny it, and finally, he realized how he had treated me all those years. He wept in court, repeatedly apologizing. "Emma, what can I do to make it up to you? Give me money." From now on, we would cut ties completely and never meet again. Kevin Collins tearfully agreed. Aside from the company shares that belonged to him and the house we once shared, he took almost nothing. The savings, the art collection, all of it became mine. Combined with the shares converted into cash, I suddenly became a wealthy woman. Before parting ways, Kevin Collins gave me a lingering look. "Emma, can we be friends in the future?" Lucas Johnson immediately pulled me into his arms, smiled at Kevin Collins, and firmly replied, "No way." Hand in hand, we left, leaving Kevin Collins behind to wallow in regret and self-reproach. After the divorce, Kevin Collins didn't end up with Hannah Brown. He spent his days reminiscing about the good times with me, realizing Hannah Brown could never compare to me. The company had a new intern, Hannah Brown, who was constantly anxious, suspicious all day, and became hysterical. Kevin Collins, furious, fired her. Out of revenge, she embezzled company funds, and when caught, she thought Kevin Collins would continue to cover for her. To her surprise, Kevin Collins showed no mercy and directly sent her to prison. Lucas Johnson even told me that Kevin Collins has now become a completely different person. Addicted to alcohol, devastated, and the company is plummeting without breaks. I smiled, as none of this concerns me anymore. I started my own company and began a new chapter of my life. As Lucas Johnson said, "From now on, my life will be extraordinarily brilliant."